Okay, so massive change and massive retooling and doing things different, having different paradigms has obstacles. What do you see are the largest obstacles for this country to get over so that we can progress to this vision so that we can excel and everybody in our country can thrive?
Sarah, another very good question. I see, U.S. has made since the time it existed, made tremendous progress. And we really are, I do believe we are the shining, city on the top of the hill, quoting, a former president, Ronald Reagan. We have achieved so much, but there are a lot of obstacles now, in the United States and making this progress. I see, politics being number one, Sarah. I see that, we have this whole division, this divide, with our branches of the government. They can't seem to come together. Our parties can't seem to come together. We see countries around the world focusing and planning under much more centralized control. Of course, many of them are not as democratic as we are. They're not democracies, but we have too much bickering. We have too many people that are focusing on their own agendas. We got to unite as a country, and we got to have common agenda, common unity. And I think this political division is not helping us, and it's not helping us to mature to the next level. That's critically important. But I also, in the areas which you really focus on, Sarah, and you are really one of the top experts, is education. I think education system is letting us down. It's letting us down, especially early education, kindergarten to 12th grades. I think we got to focus more on math and science. We got to get girls engaged very early on in math and science. We got to get talented people. We got to get talented students out of our schools to make sure they continue their careers in science and education. And we got to get out of this Common Core process. I believe that schools need to, and teachers have to have an incentive to be very creative and create their own curriculum and be able to teach students from their own knowledge. And most of the teachers, all the teachers that I know, are very, very knowledgeable, and they got to be able to take away their knowledge and position that properly, laser focus this on students and making sure there's a proper dialogue. There's a personal dialogue with students and teachers. But I believe we have great universities. We have unbelievable universities, especially Ivy League schools throughout the country. We just have to do better from kindergarten to 12th grade in the areas that I mentioned. And I'm really focusing on math, engineering, and science and innovation.
Well, we got to get education out of the McDonald's drive-through concept. And I think it's moved towards that, where everybody gets shoved through a process. And we're taking away the freedom of the teachers who were so creative and so passionate about their kids, of making sure they learn. And we're forcing them into this, I call it the McDonald's drive-through. Everybody
we are forcing them. And what happens, the good students of our country that graduate high schools and don't go on for further education, the jobs don't match. So they end up in service-oriented jobs, which they're not really the ones which could really engage them over a period of time, support them properly, and let them grow. And so I think we have work to do there. We got work to do in universities as well, Sarah, as we've been discussing. I think we gotta form much more intimate, peer-to-peer relationships with corporations and small businesses. And we gotta have those partnerships, because I think when people come out of some of the major universities, they still need a lot of hands-on training. They don't seem to be completely aligned with whatever work is required.
Well, it takes a lot of experience to get to a point where you can just jump in and really drive a company. And so I think it's important to give kids those opportunities when they're young, so that they have the paradigms. They understand what it is they're learning and how that can be applied. And I think that's disconnected.
Yeah, Sarah. So I also think I mentioned the issues with our divide within the government. I mentioned the education. But I also feel we got to do better with regulatory and tax system. It needs reform. And that's up
Absolutely.
to policymakers. We need serious reform. It is just the tax system doesn't seem to work very well. There are lots of loopholes for major corporations. The middle class is always getting squeezed, and we're just over-regulating. We're over-regulating small businesses. They need room. They want to expand. They want to hire people. We gotta give them some breaks, and we gotta be able to also have some sort of controls over finance system or healthcare, science, but we have too much of the regulation in this country.
There's a lot of countries that are ahead of us in medicine and medical advances where people are leaving the country. I did a series on, where the pillars of excellence are around the world. There's a lot of people who are leaving our country to go get medical care elsewhere because our regulatory system doesn't allow advancements in certain types of medicine. And there's very advanced countries that are doing things that are working for people, rebuilding tissue and getting people out of wheelchairs and all sorts of things that we aren't doing here because our regulations are keeping that from occurring. And to me, that has to change.
It has to change. It has to change because, even treatments which many Americans need, they need, that's why medical tourism, you just mentioned, medical tourism has taken off in many, many countries. It created a whole economies because Americans simply can't afford, expensive treatments, whether they're dental treatments or families that are looking for, in vitro, some sort of in vitro type of treatment. They have to go to India or Thailand to other places. We gotta be able to do this in this country much more effectively and not over-regulate.
Well, there's also adult stem cells where they're rebuilding tissue and getting people out of wheelchairs and working with MS and all sorts of diseases. And in this country, we can't even touch that. But, like Ronaldo, the superstar soccer player who's had problems with his torn muscle, he's rebuilding his muscle using that technology. We can't do that in this country, but in Europe they can. And in Japan, which makes the equipment, it's very advanced. There's many countries, most of the advanced countries are using this, but not us.
Exactly. And there's a case you touched upon Japan, how sophisticated their technology is. There was a whole series, and I actually discussed this yesterday in New York with my IBM colleagues, where IBM Watson has been deployed to diagnose cases of leukemia and in different patients, and they found leukemia in one lady, in a much more efficient, much more
excellent.
faster way than normal in Tokyo, in conjunction with University of Tokyo and IBM. So all sorts of advanced ways. We've got to be able to bring this back to our country and be able to leverage this so we live happier and longer lives.
Absolutely. So,
and Sarah, before we go, I do want to mention, regarding for our viewers regarding regulations and taxation systems. I actually spoke about this, and I want to throw this out and see what kind of response. I think we got to reduce our corporate taxation, and we got to stimulate R&D investments almost at the same time. And specifically, what I'm proposing is. This is what I'm proposing personally. I'm proposing that we reduce corporate taxes to 5% for all, and to repatriate profits for the next 24 months. After the 24 months period, we will increase the tax to 10% and cap that there. Then we should reduce capital gain taxes to 10% and cap it there. And finally, suspend corporate taxes to 0 for the next 24 months for any R&D investments in the United States. It is a formula which is working in some countries around the world. I've seen it.
So other countries are specifically doing this, and it's working. It is working.
Really... it is some of that, not exactly what I just mentioned,
sure.
But a part of it is been very effective in Singapore, has been very effective in Hong Kong, we got to be able to try this because right now some of the corporate taxes are really hitting small, medium-sized businesses.
They're because we got the highest tax rate in the world. And there's some industries where the people are riding without paying hardly any taxes because of the loopholes. And other industries where people are paying through the nose and they just can't. They're giving away almost all their profits at the end of the day, and they can't reinvest in their, it doesn't make sense. So I agree with you.
They cannot. And we have to be serious. I will be very bold about this. You've probably been following me on this type of initiative. I do feel that, right now around the world, sovereign wealth funds are wealth creators. They're focusing on creating wealth. They're stable. They're good stabilizers for their economy in case something goes wrong. And we need to, as United States, create our own U.S. wealth fund, and be able to secure our future, the future for our kids. Right now funds are operating. The leading fund right now is Norwegian's sovereign wealth fund. You have fund in Abu Dhabi, ADIA. You have fund Temasek in Singapore, China, GIC.
So all these countries have funds. We got to create a fund, and we use our own people's. And it's our own investment because we're using our own investment portfolios, right? So like pension funds and things like that go into this, and then we invest in our own country.
We got to invest in our country. Let's look at the numbers. BlackRock, for example, it manages, over $5 trillion in assets. We have a lot of private equity companies here in the United States. Some of them I work closely with. And all of them have billions and trillions under management. But we don't have the similar structure in the government. We got to be able to establish this type of a fund, which would be managed, by the way, I suggested it would be managed not only by the government, by very professional financial gurus, and concentrate on making profits. How are those profits going to be used? Those profits should be used to reduce our national debt, to improve our national infrastructure investments, and also invest in the strategic investments in our economy, and especially when, sometimes when you have to do a little bit of divesting, sometimes you have to invest along the bumps when our economy is overheating or underperforming. We got to be able to handle this. And I think, we should be able to do this with the private sector. Private sector.
Can we do it without there being corruption involved? Because I think people are tired of the corruption. So can we create something that we desperately need, like all the other countries in the world does, and do it cleanly and something we can be proud of?
I do believe if other countries like Singapore and Norway, they are doing this without corruption and really doing it for national interest of their countries, and we're a nation of freedom, democracy. We should be able to do this properly, but this has to be a major, major initiative. And, we have enormous debt obligations. I understand this, but I think our U.S. infrastructure really needs a lot of help, a lot of support. And we got to be able to bring American families. We got to bring people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett into the conversation, and bring everybody together so we could brainstorm and develop the best. We have examples from around the world. I just mentioned, we know what works, what doesn't work. We could fine tune this. We could supervise. And this, I certainly believe that this will be in the best national interest of our country. It will create more jobs, and we could have a completely different financial future for our prosperity, if we focus on creation.
Well, we have to do
GAAP.
something, right? Because otherwise, if we keep going the way that we're going, it's going to collapse. I mean, that's statistically proven by MIT and others. So we need to do something. So you do something like this where it starts to reduce our debt, and that mathematical formula starts going the opposite way. And
in fact, Sarah, I'll be bold here. When other countries are buying our treasury bills, a lot of them would be eager. By the way, we would appropriate a little bit for other countries, not a controlling package, but we should appropriate a little bit for other countries to invest in our sovereign wealth fund, instead of our treasury bills. I think there's a lot of ways we could work this process.
Oh, sure. Yes.
And I just think that we got to be able to do a lot better in terms of our economy. We got to be able to, and I think also, if we bring in, Sarah, professional financiers, and we got to make sure that they are solid, that they have a goal and interest of America, they should do a much better job with portfolio investment decisions because they had done it before. They have a track record. And even more than that, look at the major investments that our technology leaders are, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and other people. We want to get their knowledge and we want to bring them in as advisors to the U.S. Wealth Fund.
Absolutely. Let's bring the best and the brightest that